I keep thinking about how I want to start this, and I don't think there's any specific way to start it. I guess I really want to take the time to put myself first. You may hear my cat's little tippy tappies in the background. I think for a lot of my life, I did what I thought was expected of me. I kind of just played the part instead of really doing the things that I wanted to do. And I would say that there were things that I did do because I wanted to, but I think my mentality was very much like, if I get this thing, then my life will be different, or I will feel better, or full and not empty. But I realized that it doesn't matter how hard you chase something, or if you actually achieve it or not. It doesn't really fill that void. And I think I'm at a point in my life where I genuinely didn't think that I would live this long, which sounds crazy, I know. But that's a belief that I really had. And it's clear to me that I'm still here, and I can either continue to be miserable and not really respect myself or love myself or live life in the way that I want to live it. I know that I am capable of the things that I want to do. It's just keeping the motivation or not sprinting straight to the finish line instead of enjoying the journey along the way. I also have a really bad habit of going full force at a lot of things, and then inevitably just burning out a few months later. And I don't really want to do that anymore. And I don't really want to keep having mental breakdowns every year. I would say I have at least one every year. And I try not to be too hard on myself anymore. But it's still a really bad habit that I'm trying to break. I know that I have struggled with mental illness for a very long time. And I have tried my best to heal from that and change my mindset and my perspective as much as I can. But it's still tough when it just feels like there's all these things that still kind of weigh you down. And it doesn't matter how many like healthy coping mechanisms you may have, or outlets, or whatever, you can still just kind of have like a really bad day. And I guess for me, when that happens, I just worry that I'm gonna stay there and then I'm not gonna be able to come back up as quickly as I would like. Because sometimes it's like I'm in that hole and it takes a really long time to come out. And then it feels like my life is just on pause again. And I know a lot of this stuff doesn't change overnight as much as I would like it to. But my hope is that I can hopefully heal from a lot of my traumas and kind of maybe get to a point where I just don't have these like trauma responses all the time. Because something I also realize is as much as you avoid things like anxiety or trauma or depression, and probably a lot of other things as well, is it kind of just festers and it gets worse. And you can run from it as fast as you want, but it will still catch up. And it will still pop up in places that you don't want it to. And I really just want my cat. Yes, she is a little chubby and she needs to be brushed. But she gets very angry when I brush her, but I do manage to get a few in once in a while. Anyways, kind of lost my train of thought. But I guess this year I just want to try to have more of a life of peace and kind of allow myself to be as I am, no matter what I'm feeling. Because emotions don't define you, they're just kind of like there to tell you something. And I also just want to be a little more present. It's really hard for me to remember a lot of things. I know I don't need like a superhuman kind of memory, but I find it like really distressing when I can't really remember like what's been going on. And I kind of thought that was because of substances that I was taking. And I mean, it could have been, but I've been sober for about 3 months now. A little longer, probably a little longer, but that's just kind of when I started counting because I can't remember anything. I wonder if you can hear the train. But I think this will also just be a good way to help me be perceived. I know the internet is not necessarily a nice place all the time, as I have been pretty chronically online for a while. I'm usually just kind of lurking in the shadows. But I really struggle with just kind of like being in front of people seeing me. It's hard for me to not fall into like people pleasing kind of tendencies, or like molding my personality to fit the situation instead of just being myself. And I think that's like, I can understand why it happened. But the more I think about it, the more it just kind of makes me sad. And I would like to be myself. I would much prefer just to be who I am and not be afraid to do that. I think for a long time I convinced myself that I was too much, too dramatic. I wore too much makeup. I shouldn't wear wigs. I was overdressed to go to the grocery store or whatever. And in the grand scheme of things, I kept putting a lot of power into things that just really didn't matter. Instead of like things like my values, my morals, or boundaries. God forbid I set some boundaries. But I'm trying to be better about that as well. Because if I can't respect myself, how can I expect others to do the same? I think I have a really bad habit of thinking if I do this for someone, then maybe they will do something for me. Instead of like just being kind, I focused on being nice because I wanted something from someone. And usually it was just like to spend time with them, because I do spend a decent amount of time alone. I don't get a lot of social interaction. It's pretty limited. I would say it's mostly by choice, because I never know what will trigger me. And I don't really want to kind of put myself in those positions until I can kind of get a better hold of it. I know it's not ideal to be like, well, when I'm healed, I will do this. Because part of healing is doing it, being in those situations. But it's still at a point where it's really hard for me to meet new people and make new friends. And even just like kind of interact with the friends that I already have. Because I'm very good at convincing myself that they don't want to hear from me. And yeah, I think I told myself for a really long time that I wasn't worth anything and I wouldn't amount to anything. And it's not that I necessarily need to amount to anything. It's just more of the fact that I want to have some meaning in my life, some sort of purpose. I'm still not really sure what that looks like for me, but I know that like working kind of like traditional jobs. I mean, I've only ever worked basically like minimum wage jobs, and I mean, I guess a lot of jobs in general are kind of the same in the way that like you're paid to do something and then that's kind of like the end of it. And I guess I just don't fit into a lot of those situations. And even though I never really worked a whole lot, it still really weighed on me. And it honestly felt like it was sucking the life out of me. and then I would get sick, and it would take me a really long time to not be sick anymore. And this is actually like a physical illness, but I mean, mental illness is also an illness, you just can't see it. But like when you're like physically ill and you're also stressed, it takes longer for your body to recover. And it was always like moments like that where I'm like, something needs to change. And I knew for a long time that something needed to change, but I couldn't really figure out what it was. Because I thought that I was just like stupid or too dramatic or weak or whatever, but I think the more introspection that I do, the more I realize that I betray myself at every chance I can or get. And I will choose anything else other than being authentic. And I don't think it feels very good for like me, or I guess anyone in general. Like, it doesn't feel very good to not necessarily lie, but to like wear this mask all the time, because it feels too scary to just be yourself. My brain is kind of starting to not work anymore. But I also can't really remember exactly how I started this, but it's mostly just kind of a train of thought. I want to kind of document my journey as I work on self-improvement and work on being more authentic and present and find meaning and purpose and just like a general will to live. And I hope that this will help me kind of see my progress, because I know that over the years I have made progress, but it's really hard to see that when you kind of just keep raising the bar. And I'm also really good at diminishing myself and making myself small. And I would like to be actually proud of the things that I've done, instead of being like, well, it's no big deal. Even though I still do believe that a lot of things is no big deal, because I'm a big believer if there's a will, there's a way. And the first step at being good at something is to be crap at it. And if you want it enough, I think you can get it. But it's whether or not it'll be sustainable or not. And for me, it's never sustainable. And I would like something to last more than a year or two in my life. And I think that's probably a good place to end it. I think it would be a good idea to make something like weekly, just to kind of hold myself accountable, and also just to see updates. And I also know that I'm a verbal processor, and so it really helps for me to talk things out. I just find that I have a bad habit of trauma dumping on people, and I may trauma dump on here. I can't just guarantee that won't happen, because sometimes sometimes it just does. But I like having hard conversations. I like talking about these things. Like, if you have the capacity to talk about them, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, that is it for me, I guess. And I hope that if anyone comes across this, that maybe they can relate to this and maybe feel seen and know that they're not the only one that feels this way. I mean, I know I'm not, but sometimes it's hard to believe that when no one really talks about it. I hope you have a good day and stay safe.